Your dog tucked their tail today. You probably felt a pang of guilt, wondered if you'd done something wrong, maybe reached down to comfort them. Most people think a tucked tail means a scared dog. But what if that tail is telling you something far more specific? Something about their body, their history, and the exact state of their nervous system in that moment. And you've been reading it wrong for years. Subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to learn will permanently change how you see your dog. Number 1. The body doesn't lie. Before we get into what a tucked tail means emotionally, you have to understand what it does physically, because the two are inseparable. When your dog pulls their tail down and inward, pressing it flat against their belly, or curling it tight between their hind legs, that's not a gesture. Behavioral scientists have found that it's a full-body physiological event. The muscles along the dog's lower spine and hindquarters contract simultaneously. The posture lowers their center of gravity. Their head drops, their shoulders curve inward, and their weight shifts backward onto their haunches. What's happening in that moment is the activation of the parasympathetic stress response, the same biological mechanism that makes a human's shoulders rise toward their ears in a tense meeting, or causes a person to physically make themselves smaller in a crowd. Research from animal behavior laboratories confirms that this postural collapse happens in milliseconds, faster than conscious thought, which means your dog isn't deciding to tuck their tail, their body is doing it for them. And that distinction matters enormously for what you do next. Number 2. What the tail is actually covering. Here's something most dog owners have never considered. A tucked tail isn't just a signal sent outward to you or to other dogs. It's also a shield. Dogs have scent glands on either side of the base of their tail, and those glands broadcast identity information constantly. The canine equivalent of a name, a mood report, and a social status update all at once. Studies published in veterinary ethology journals confirm that when a dog tucks their tail, they are physically blocking the release of that scent. They are, in the most literal biological sense, going silent. They are removing themselves from the social conversation happening in the air around them. A confident dog walking into a room with tail raised is essentially announcing their presence. A dog with a tucked tail is doing the opposite, withdrawing their identity, making themselves chemically invisible. When you understand that, a tucked tail stops looking like sadness and starts looking like a specific kind of communication. One that says, "I am not a threat. Please don't notice me. I am making myself as small and unreadable as possible." That realization shifts everything about how you should respond. Number 3. Fear is not one thing. Most people use the word fear as if it's a single emotion with a single cause. But behavioral science has spent decades demonstrating that fear exists on a spectrum with very different biological signatures. Research from comparative psychology programs shows that the tucked tail appears across at least 3 distinct emotional states, and confusing them is one of the most common mistakes owners make. The first is acute fear, triggered by something sudden and loud, a thunderclap, a dropped pan, a stranger moving too fast. In this state, the tail tucks hard and fast. The dog may freeze or bolt, and the whites of their eyes often show. The second is social anxiety, which looks quieter. The tail tucks lower and slower when another dog or unfamiliar person enters the space, and the dog may still move but keeps their body angled away. The third is learned submission, the most misunderstood of all, where a dog who has repeatedly been punished or overwhelmed develops a chronic, low-level tail position that isn't triggered by any single event, but by the accumulated weight of their history. Treating all 3 the same way is like giving the same medicine to someone with a paper cut and someone with a broken arm. Number 4. What evolution wired into that signal? To understand why this behavior is so deeply embedded, you have to go back further than domestic dogs, back to their wolf ancestors and the pack dynamics that shaped every social signal in a dog's behavioral repertoire. Ethologists studying wild canid populations have documented that tail position in wolves functions as a real-time social broadcast, visible from significant distances across open terrain. A lowered or tucked tail in a wolf signals non-competition and deference, a biological white flag that reduces the chance of conflict with a dominant animal. That signal worked because it was involuntary, and therefore honest. A wolf couldn't fake submission the way a human might fake a smile, because the postural collapse involved is neurologically driven, not consciously controlled. Your dog carries that same wiring. When their tail tucks, they are not performing for you. They are broadcasting a state that evolution made impossible to counterfeit. which is precisely why it's one of the most reliable windows into their internal experience that you will ever have access to. Number 5. When your reaction becomes part of the signal. What most owners don't realize is that the moment after the tail tucks is when the relationship either deepens or fractures, depending entirely on what you do. Research into human-canine interaction published by animal welfare scientists has found that owners who respond to tail tucking with excessive coddling, meaning high-pitched voices, frantic petting, repeated reassurance, actually reinforce the stress state rather than dissolving it. Your dog's nervous system reads your elevated energy as confirmation that something genuinely threatening is happening. Conversely, owners who respond with calm, low-energy presence, moving slowly, lowering themselves to the dog's level without crowding them, speaking in a flat, steady tone, help activate the dog's social engagement system, the neurological pathway governed in part by oxytocin release that signals safety. Behavioral scientists describe this as co-regulation, your nervous system broadcasting a state that your dog's nervous system learns to borrow. When you stay calm, you are not ignoring your dog's distress. You are becoming the evidence they need that the threat is not real. Number 6. The tail that tucks at home. A tail that tucks in a thunderstorm makes immediate sense to most owners. A tail that tucks at home, in a familiar space, with no obvious trigger, is the one that should stop you cold. Behavioral veterinarians flag this pattern as one of the earliest and most overlooked signs of chronic stress in domestic dogs. When a dog in their own home regularly carries their tail low or tucked during ordinary activities, during feeding, during quiet evenings, when guests arrive, research suggests their baseline cortisol levels may be elevated, meaning their body is running a low-grade stress response even in the absence of acute threat. The causes are surprisingly mundane. Inconsistent daily routines, unpredictable human moods, a home with frequent conflict, insufficient mental stimulation, or a history that predates your ownership. Studies from shelter medicine research groups confirm that dogs adopted after early trauma can carry that chronic tail position for months before trust is established. If you are seeing this at home, the tail is not misbehaving. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do, giving you an honest read of your dog's interior world. Number 7. Reading the whole dog. A tucked tail in isolation is a starting point, not a conclusion. And behavioral scientists consistently emphasize that accurate reading of canine emotion requires attending to the full body simultaneously. The tail's position becomes meaningful in combination with ear set, eye shape, mouth tension, and weight distribution. A dog with a tucked tail and soft, blinking eyes is communicating something different from a dog with a tucked tail, hard, fixed eyes, and a closed, tight mouth. The first is displaying appeasement, a social signal that says, "I am not competing with you." The second is displaying what researchers call conflict behavior, a dog caught between fear and the impulse to defend, which is a significantly more volatile state and one that owners often miss because they focus on the tail and conclude the dog is simply shy. Research into dog bite incidents has found that many bites are preceded by exactly this combination, a tucked tail that owners read as submission, while the rest of the body was signaling escalating distress. The tail is one instrument in a full orchestra, and learning to hear the whole piece changes what you can catch before it becomes a crisis. Every time your dog tucks their tail, they are handing you a piece of information that took millions of years of evolution to develop, one that bypasses language entirely and speaks directly in the currency of biology. What you've learned watching this isn't just a collection of facts about posture. It's a new language. When that tail drops, you now know to ask which kind of fear, to check the rest of the body, to respond with calm instead of panic, to consider whether the home itself might be what your dog is trying to tell you about. The dog who tucks their tail at the sound of your raised voice isn't being dramatic. They are telling you exactly where the relationship needs your attention. The dog who tucks their tail every time a visitor enters isn't being difficult. They are showing you their nervous system's history. And the dog who used to tuck their tail but no longer does around you? That change didn't happen by accident. It happened because you became someone their body learned to trust. If this changed how you see your dog, share this video with someone who loves theirs. Subscribe to the channel, because understanding the animal living beside you is the most worthwhile thing you can do with 10 minutes of your day.